Transhumanism is the idea that man is merging with technology.
I'm Marvin Minsky, and I teach at MIT in subjects of theories about how to make machines that are intelligent, whatever that means.
Surpassing human intelligence, sweeping aside everything in its path. It may be 20 years away, it may be 1,000, but most experts agree the technological singularity is inevitable. The fear is, if it's uncontrolled, the results could be catastrophic.
And Marvin Minsky asked the question, will robots inherit the earth? And he says, yes, they will, but they will be our children. Transhumanism is a term used for a broad range of ideas that technology is greatly enhancing human capabilities. This means everything from bionic limbs, brain implants, artificial intelligence, to even someday uploading our minds to the internet. And we have already a symbiotic relationship with our technology. And in that sense, we're already transhuman. And I'm sure many of you here today brought your smartphones with you. But transhumanism is the future of connectedness.
It's easy to think that if only our technology advances enough, we'll finally be satisfied. The fact is, we remain shackled by our primitive Darwinian brains.
Here's what I think is the problem. The brain doesn't work in a simple way because evolution has been going on for 400 million years in building structures upon structures upon structures.
And it's the groundwork that's laid by these previous technologies that allow these new levels to be achieved. So for example, the cell phone infrastructure that was created allowed for the rise of mobile computing. And the internet allowed for the rise of social networks and cat videos. But it's hard to imagine where these advances take us as a species because we're only able to observe these small incremental steps along the way.
Humanity, for whatever progress we have made, is the result of an unguided, natural, 3.8 billion year long experiment of chemistry. Evolution is the process that has made you what you are, but it is not far-seeing. It does not and cannot consider the future, make decisions about where we ought to go, how we ought to be.
The neurons in our brains are almost the same as they were 400 million years ago, but the organizations are much more complicated.
Now, I believe that the pace of technology will evolve to the point where biology will become the limiting factor. So how many thoughts can you hold on in your mind at once? 2, maybe 3?
So a good way to think of the brain is that it's 400 different computers. If you look in a book on neurology in the index, you see hundreds of different structures, and they each work in different ways. So I think it was a sort of mistake to look for the common principles.
Passing on genes is the only objective. But as thinking human beings, we care about far more than that. Consciousness means that we have the capacity to experience the world, to reflect upon, and, most importantly, to shape it. And so, what begins as humanism, our most sympathetic understanding and treatment of human nature, becomes transhumanism, the drive to fundamentally revolutionize what it means to be human by way of technological advancements.
So one of the principles of this evolution in technology is that technology is getting smaller, faster, cheaper, and more powerful every day. And in terms of physical size, it's 100 times smaller every decade. And this principle is known as Moore's Law. And it's the idea that technology will grow exponentially or double about every 2 years. And Ray Kurzweil explains it in 30 steps.
And I suspect that the important thing about the brain was that we evolved structures. In fact, most of the higher brain is made of cortical columns, each of which have a few hundred cells. And I suspect that those insulate the rest of the mind from the properties of the neurons. So you see, a physicist might want to reduce everything down to how the individual neuron works, but I think what we need to do is understand how the columns work. And if you go from one part of the brain to another, there are hundreds of regions, and the wiring is a little bit different in each of those.
So let's connect some of these futuristic dots. Let's look at a possible roadmap for the future.
Generally speaking, transhumanist thought does two things. First, it considers current trends to see how future technologies will develop and how they might affect us. Second, it calls for the use of current and upcoming technology to bring about beneficial societal change. We'll examine three central areas of transhumanist thought: super longevity, super intelligence, and super well-being. Dubbed the three supers because of their extraordinary transformative potential.
But in the near future, your family, your friends will have computers embedded into their clothing, in addition to their wrists and their glasses. But further along the wearable continuum will be things like embeddables, like small sensors that are placed underneath your skin. And as technology becomes smaller, cheaper, and more powerful, 50 billion devices will be connected over the next decade. And the internet will be more like a utility, like electricity. It'll be something you plug into. And this invisible force will connect all of these fragmented systems, becoming a digital nervous system for the planet that you, me, everything we interact with will become a part of. In a sense, the Internet of Things is already begun. We have a number of sensors in our smartphones. The average sensor has GPS, accelerometers, altimeters, and a number of others. But this is just the beginning. And the real power comes when these devices begin to talk to each other. So devices in your home will adjust for the optimal energy usage. And your alarm clock will set itself based on your calendar. It'll check weather conditions. And these agents will run in the background taking care of you.
And different parts of the brain have different goals. And this critic says, 5 minutes have passed and there's no progress. I will turn myself off and turn on these 6 other ones, and they'll fight it out for a while. So I don't think there's any self.
Body 2.0 will include artificial eyes with zoom capabilities, infrared sensors, and night vision will be possible. And the prosthetic limbs of the future will be even more flexible and powerful than our original organic limbs that we have today. Retinal implants in a few years will allow the blind to see and recognize faces. And there are already arms that are controlled by human thought using a small implant in the brain.
So there's no person in here. What there are these bunch of ideals and processes and high-level goals, and there are all these low-level processes. And then most of the brain is negotiating and arbitrating. There's a popular idea that if you build a baby machine, you could call it, with a simple kind of learning machine that associates ideas or remembers sequences and correlates things, that if you keep reapplying that, it'll get smarter and smarter and smarter. And that's sort of popular. And in the last 20 years, about a dozen baby machine projects were started. And all subsequent baby programs have managed to learn a couple of skills, and then you keep training them, but they don't get much better. So the difference in my approach is I think all of these different techniques that people have worked on have uses, and we just have to organize them into a larger architecture where there is also a vast amount of common sense knowledge about how to tell when one of these processes isn't working and how to, and given the symptoms of a failure, which of the other processes should you turn on.
So in the future, it may be possible to remove or implant memories, and even treating things like dementia, Alzheimer's, post-traumatic stress, or personal traumas, or other types of neurological disorders.
So basically, we get resourcefulness from having many resources, not from having one very smart one.
So eventually we'll understand enough about the brain and have ability to send little scanners inside your brain and capture all those details, whatever those details happen to be that are important. Basically upload enough details of your mind to create an indistinguishable copy in some other machine.
Right, a wonderful future where you have backup copies.
Now on the left, what you're looking at is a random YouTube clip. But on the right, It's a clip reconstructed from brain activity using an MRI. Now stop and think about that for a minute. This is the beginning of the age of mind reading. We're at early steps now in the research for seeing through another person's eyes.
And people will say, can you imagine people didn't back up their brains 100 years ago? But would you consider one of those backups to be you or just somebody else who happens to be a lot like you?
I think it's the same thing. I'm not exactly like I was 5 minutes ago, especially after talking to Ray Kurzweil for a half hour. I'm a noticeably different person.
And Michio Kaku describes brain implants as your very own augmented mind. And this is the beginning of the brain net, a possible successor to the internet, a form of virtual telepathy that will allow you to create music, drive a car, communicate with other people, and even surf the web at the speed of thought. Movies will no longer be these two-dimensional slate tablets that you look into and blast sound at you. They'll be fully immersive experiences, complete with feeling and emotion the way the director originally intended.
People say, well, but surely I'm a person. I'm a single thing. I'm an entity, and a machine that just has a lot of parts wouldn't have any such central device. Well, I think it's an illusion. You don't really see yourself. What you do is you make a model of yourself. Some part of your brain says, what am I? I am a body and a mind. And the other part of the brain looks at that and says, oh, I see. I'm not just a machine. Most people believe the body and mind isn't enough, so there's got to be something else, which is correct.
Everything is stored, every memory recorded, and available on a cloud service. And mind uploading will allow your friends to share their digital vacation experiences that never actually took place.
I believe that if you say some mental states are emotional and some are intellectual, then you're back in Aristotle's time, and he was very good at this. Emotional states usually have less structure than other ways to think.
Imagination. And these creative people, they lived on. Imagination is an insurance policy for problems in the future. And we are the species that transcends and transforms. It is what we are. And it's how we advance and extend our reach. But our biology hasn't changed in 200,000 years. We're still the same anxious and aggressive hunters that we once were.
Nobody really is in a position to guess how big a computer you need, or bigger, faster computer you need to do the highest levels of human thought. And I suspect it's rather small, and that each bit of what a computer does probably needs thousands of neurons. And so most of the brain is, because neurons are rather unreliable and noisy and flaky, we need a lot of them, but they're not computing very much.
Perhaps we have not yet reached the pinnacle of human potential.
Overall, how optimistic are you about the prospects for AI, particularly at the human level, as we go forward?
It's a very important question, because I think we're going to need AIs before long. And the reason is one that you've considered, but most people haven't, which is that human longevity is going to grow very rapidly.
But that all changes with the children of today. Some call them digital natives. This is my son. And to him and his generation, anything that isn't computerized, digital, or touch-enabled will seem unnatural. To them, the smartphone is already an extension of their brain. To them, the smartphone and mind-uploading powered exoskeletons will be just a part of life. And transhumanism will seem just as natural as evolution, and anyone who doesn't follow suit will seem thoroughly inhuman.
Basically, there'll be no one to do the work. So we're going to need very smart machines to make the beds and nail the solar panels to the tops of the telephone poles and all the things that have to be done.
Now, I believe that the future is hopeful. And I'd like to share another quick video called The Future is Ours. And it was created by my friend and director, Michael Morantz. And it's a video that's an inspiring message of hope. So I hope you enjoy it.
climate change,
deadly earthquake,
a suicide bomber,
terrorism,
nuclear device in the heart of the nation's capital.
It's no wonder that we're pessimistic. It's no wonder that people think that the world is getting worse. But perhaps that's not the case.
Perhaps we forget that we've only just begun.
Doing what's never been done before is intellectually seductive, whether or not we deem it practical.
What we're seeing is unfathomably new possibilities all of a sudden becoming available to us.
The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave.
You have to trust in something. Your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever.
We truly are living in an extraordinary time, and many people forget this.
So now technically your device is on. Can you tell? Can you hear me?
The yearning to do what we do in the service of something larger than ourselves.
Where did we come from? Are we alone in the universe? What is the future of the human race?
When you conduct those exercises, innovation follows just as day follows night.
we can do this. I know we can because we've done it before.
Stay hungry, stay foolish.